Welcome to the CCSP study session. Today we're going to be talking about business continuity, business impact analysis, and continuity of operations. So business continuity is a plan for keeping your business running. Okay. In the event of a disruption or a disaster, how do you keep your business providing its services, or how do you keep your business its survivability up during a disruption that's unavoidable? Either are you in a position to provide your services to your customers continuously throughout the disaster or throughout the disruption, or are there steps in place to ensure that your business survives after a disruption where you have a complete loss of business functions? There's multiple methods and different definitions for what constitutes business continuity. There's different standards. You have ISO, IEC, 27031. That's one standard that's out there. NIST, the U.S. government's institute, National Institutes of Standard and Technology. They have their own set of continuity publications. You have the Disaster Recovery Institute. In Great Britain, you have the British Standards Institute, 25,999, and the Business Continuity Institute Good Practice Guidelines. All of these are guidelines for how to conduct business continuity properly. They all follow the same basic principles. A business impact analysis is an analysis of all the business functions within an organization to determine what business functions are critical and how a disruption will affect each of them. Okay? So when you look at a business impact analysis, you want to take a look at the timing of the disruption, the possible duration of that downtime, what that disruption would cause, what financial impacts that might cause, or what reputational impacts that would cause. Let's take a look at an example of a business continuity document here. So this one comes from ready.gov, which is a U.S. government organization that provides resources for businesses to develop their own business continuity plans and to prepare for natural disasters and other disruptions. Now, this is an open study session, by the way, so if you have any questions, please write them in the chat. I'll be happy to get to them. And if there's any topics you want to focus on, just let me know and we could focus on those as well. We don't have to continuously focus on this topic. This is just my general plan for today. So let's take a look at this business impact analysis worksheet, and this will give us an idea how to conduct a business impact analysis. Let's take an example of, let's say, a theme park. Okay? So we're going to start here. This is for a theme park. Okay. Theme park's a pretty easy example because all of the things we're going to talk about are going to be covered with a disruption to a theme park. It's pretty easy to visualize. Most people have been to a theme park at least once in their life. So when you fill out this business impact analysis, you're going to want to focus on different business areas. Okay? Each business area or business function will have its own set of requirements, its own service offerings. So with this theme park, you might have, it's pretty simple, you'd have like the rides, you might have the games, okay, you might have the concession stands or the food, the ticketing office. Those might all be different departments within that theme park to get it to run. And then you might have something like a hotel that the theme park company also owns. That's a different function altogether. Now you're looking at, the hotel industry as opposed to just the amusement industry or the entertainment industry. But let's take a look at, anyway, rides. Okay, and that'll be our business function. And how you split this up is going to be determined by the organization. So let's say there's a tornado, right? And the tornado causes 2 days of disruption because the tornado comes in and no rides can be operated that day. It's too dangerous, and then the park needs to be cleaned up after everything's safe, and it takes another day. Okay. Now with a theme park, depending on its location, say we have a theme park in Oregon, that in Oregon might experience snowstorms during the winter. It's too cold during the winter to operate theme parks like this. And then in the summer is the prime time to operate theme parks. So there you might have a duration or a timing issue to consider. So if this disruption, this tornado would happen in the winter, there might not be much, if any, of a financial impact because the rides wouldn't be operating at that time. But if it's in the summer, excuse me, if it's in the summer, then you're going to have a full impact because that's a prime time to operate these rides and how the park makes money. So let's say it's a summer disruption, okay, for 2 days. The operational impact would be all rides are closed. And a financial impact, say, the rides are calculated to bring in $200,000 a day. Okay. So this just gives you an idea of how you would calculate this for each business function. You calculate the cost of a disruption, usually in the amount of time, per unit of time, with a dollar amount for each business function. So if the rides are closed, it's going to cost the park $200,000 a day. Of course, that's estimated. If the rides are closed, then most likely the entire park's closed. And we could just say that here, perhaps. If this were in the winter, there might not be any impact because the park's closed in the winter. So that would be 0. Now, maybe there is a disruption where a ride is destroyed, okay? So, ride damaged, and then you would include the cost of that in your financial impact. Maybe that ride, to repair it, would cost $1 million. And you can include that as another operational impact. But this basically gives you an idea of how to conduct this type of analysis. Okay, and you look at the bottom of the worksheet here, it tells you. You have your operational impact, loss of sales, loss of income, negative cash flow due to delays, fines or extra expenses. Maybe it costs more. You have to hire more personnel to clean up the park after tornado. Customer dissatisfaction. Maybe you have a loss of reputation. If you don't fix the ride in a timely manner, people might start looking at other theme parks. If the ride is damaged. If the ride is damaged, you'd have the cost of fixing the ride. And then you might also have loss of customers. Maybe this was your premier roller coaster, and you are losing customers to a more thrilling theme park because you've lost your main attraction. So you'd want to include the duration, the timing. We chose seasonal here, and we chose to measure this in days. It can be measured in hours. It can be measured in weeks or months. And then the possible impacts and the financial impact. So the operational impact are ride damage, and then customer defection. So the customers are going somewhere else. So these are the possible impacts. Possibly. Okay? Now this is a pretty basic worksheet. Let's take a look at something that's a little more robust here. And this is going to come in the form of NIST publication 800-34. This is contingency planning for federal information systems. And this document provides pretty detailed instructions on how to conduct this type of planning and what the different types of planning are. So let's take a look at those definitions. Okay. So we have here types of continuity plans. Okay. And we talk about business continuity as an overarching term, and then when we want to talk about specific plans, this is how you get a good understanding. So you have a business continuity plan, which is the business's main functions or processes and how to keep those alive and sustainable. Then you have a continuity of operations plan, which according to this would be the mission essential functions. Okay. So these would be the most essential functions for a business. So this would be more of just business processes, and this is essential processes. Then you have crisis communications plan, and that's just how you would communicate during disaster or some sort of disruption. Critical infrastructure plan, these are infrastructure focused, so I'm talking like utilities, power lines, etc. A cyber incident response plan, this might be a malicious hacking attempt or a cyber attack that disrupts key systems. And this is a U.S. federal government document, so the focus is going to be on U.S. federal government systems. So it's explaining in general terms what types of plans would be available with the U.S. federal government. Okay, but it's still a good guide, if you will. Disaster recovery plan, this is most likely natural disasters, things that like cause physical damage or disruptions. Okay. Information system, this is for specifically information systems, and this would be in cloud computing, the continuity plans that we talk about mostly affect information systems. Okay, so you could say that what we're doing with cloud computing is creating information system contingency plans, because our main business function as a cloud service provider is our cloud service offering, the information systems that back that up. Or as a cloud customer, we want to back up our information systems and use failover systems, or put our data in the cloud, or have our web application use redundancy in the cloud. So we use that information system contingency plan to achieve that. And then we have, this is more like a terrorist situation or a possible fire threat. This is how occupants of a specific building are going to respond to a threat. Okay? And it talks about in this document all the different plans and how they differ from one another, what their scope is, and how they relate to one another. Most organizations don't develop every single one of these plans, even for even an organization that has like information systems as their primary focus. They might not delve too deep and develop a information system contingency plan. They might just call that a business continuity plan or continuity of operations plan, a COOP plan, okay? or a disaster recovery plan. They might use general terminology, but I'm just getting you familiar with the different types of plans. And if you, like, I've worked with many different government agencies, including the Department of Homeland Security, and I've only seen those agencies use the general terms business continuity plan, disaster recovery plan, continuity of operations plan. I have not seen the term information system contingency plan being used, or occupant emergency plans, or cyber incident response plans. Usually those are very specialized, and I haven't seen them, honestly. So whether this is guidance that is taken verbatim, or if it's just general guidance and this is the method for classifying the plans, and then most organizations take this guidance to develop their own procedures, that's probably the case, actually. Okay, so here we talk about conducting the business impact analysis, okay? So the business impact analysis, as we said, talks about all the business processes, and there's steps involved. So we have, first, determining the mission and business processes, their criticality. So we're assigning a level of criticality or importance to each business function. What business functions are needed to continue our operations? Okay, so if we talk about our theme park example, the theme park as a whole would be the organization. To continue mission functionality, the theme park will need its attractions, right? It'll need its rides, okay? That should be a critical piece of its infrastructure or critical business processes. So it's attractions. Will it need the salted pretzel shack? Probably not. People aren't going to a theme park to eat salted pretzels. They're going there to see the rides, ride the rides, etc. Okay? Salted pretzel enthusiasts might make the argument that that's a critical business function, but let's be real, it's not. So the critical business function would be those attractions. Okay, you need those attractions up and running and available to attract people to the park and make revenue off ticket sales. So that would have a higher criticality level, the rides, than the salted pretzel stand. Okay. Identify resource requirements. So these are resources, these are things that you need to keep the park in operation. Okay. So when it comes to a theme park, you're going to need probably the personnel, the ride testers. Those are critical personnel. Okay, the people who can keep the attractions running, the people who can certify the safety of those rides and verify that on a daily basis. If you lose those personnel, then you're not able legally to operate those rides. Okay, is the person who operates the salted pretzel stand a critical resource, a human resource? Probably not. So if the salted pretzel stand was disrupted, it wouldn't cause a critical loss of business functionality. And then you identify the recovery priorities for the resources. Okay. So for this theme park example, the recovery priorities might be to get those rides up and running as fast as possible. Those rides would be given a risk category of maybe high. Okay. So here we have a sample BIA process. We have a business process here. Okay. There's different business processes: process invoice, prepare report, create budget, respond to inquiries. So the invoice process has a maximum tolerable downtime. The maximum time that process can be put offline of 72 hours. Okay. Its potential impacts would be about 1,000 staff. Zoom in a little. Its system components, what's required to make those invoices, are the application server, and the recovery time objective on that application server is 36 hours. So of all of these processes here, you see the maximum tolerable downtime is the highest. The recovery time objective is the longest. And the risk category for this process is low, low, low for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Okay? As opposed to, let's say, we have the prepare report. Okay? Prepare report has a potential reputational impact and a maximum tolerable downtime of 30 hours. So 30 hours being the least lenient of the maximum tolerable downtimes here, and that system component is the web server with a recovery time objective of only 24 hours, which is the second shortest. And the component has a risk category of moderate, moderate, moderate. So clearly this web server is more, the web server is required for this critical piece of critical business function. So the web server is a key piece that needs to have a higher level of criticality. Okay, this process, prepare reports, has to have a higher level of criticality because of the potential impacts. Now, when you're doing this, there's no set guidebook that tells you, okay, this is the most critical business function. This is the most critical business function. You get that information by talking to stakeholders, by talking to the people who work at the company, talking to management, talking to the people who work in those business processes, and asking their opinion. What do you think is most critical? What do you think is the most critical? What can we not do without? You gather that information from people within the company, okay? Your senior management might have a certain idea of what's critical that might conflict with the stakeholders. You take all the inputs together, and then you make a coherent plan. And then you decide upon these risk metrics. So you need to gather your information well to correctly assess the criticality of each of these business functions. There's no guidebook that's going to tell you, add this and this and this to determine the criticality, and that's it. It takes a lot of knowledge of your business functions and your determination. It's an analysis. It's a business impact analysis. It's not something that's clear cut. So that's something to consider. It's kind of abstract. Okay? Much like most of the cloud computing course, many of these concepts are fairly abstract. Okay, here's a few points you should know. Maximum tolerable downtime, MTD. It's the total amount of time a system is able to be offline. Okay? Let's take a look at our slides because I like to I think I explained this a little better here. Okay, maximum tolerable downtime. It's, like I said, the maximum amount of time a business process can be down before a company fails. Okay, and this is going to be different for each business process, as we've seen. We saw that the reporting side had a maximum tolerable downtime that was different than the invoicing process for that example listed in the worksheet. It's going to be measured in time, always. Maximum tolerable downtime is measured in time, usually within hours. And different risk categories have different maximum tolerable downtimes. If you have a business process that's at a higher risk, you might have a different maximum tolerable downtime. Then you have recovery objectives. You have recovery time and recovery point. Okay? Both of these are measured in time. Recovery time objective is the earliest time period in which a business process must be restored to prevent unacceptable losses. Anything past that recovery time objective would create unacceptable losses, but it would not cause the business process to fail. So it has to be smaller always than the maximum tolerable downtime. So just remember that RTO is always smaller than MTD. Okay. A recovery point objective is usually measured in the backups that are recoverable. Okay. So it's an acceptable amount of data loss. And you would measure the data loss by the time to the last backup. So backups are usually conducted daily, weekly, etc. If a disruption occurs on an information system and a backup needs to be pulled to restore that system to full capacity, what is the maximum or the maximum time that you can recover to in order to not recover or not to have a major disruption at business function? Okay, so would going back to yesterday's backup be acceptable for that business process? Or going back 1 week's backup, would that be acceptable for that business process? That's what your recovery point objective is. Okay, if it's a critical business function that requires constant updates, then perhaps your recovery point objective is only 1 day. If it's something that is less critical, like in the example with the worksheet, this invoice, right? This invoice might have a recovery point objective. Well, it has a recovery time objective of 36 hours, so it wouldn't be a week. But maybe that recovery point objective would be 1 day. And then but you're not going to find a backup usually greater than 1 day or less than 1 day. So in this example, all of these would probably have a recovery point objective of 1 day. And the recovery time objectives might be a little aggressive here, honestly. Not a very good example to illustrate what I'm talking about. But you have your recovery point objective is going to be measured by the backup. Okay. So what backup can you go to not experience unacceptable losses or unacceptable disruptions for that business process? Some organizations back up more regularly, so you might have a backup every 8 hours, possibly. And if you have a very high or a very critical system, a high level criticality, high risk level, then you might have to perform backups on a more regular basis than every 24 hours. Disaster recovery is a subset of business continuity, as we saw within the worksheet or the publication. So here it lists disaster recovery as a type of plan. A disaster recovery plan, which would be a disruption that's long-term, okay? And usually these are like natural disasters, though in our current situation, social distancing would be definitely considered a disaster, okay? That would call for a disaster recovery plan. So this is usually something that disrupts in terms of time for many days or more. It's usually measured in days, the level of disruption. And this would be the process for restoring capabilities of a business after that disaster. Okay. So normally we talk about disaster recovery with natural disasters like fires or earthquakes. With what we're experiencing now, social distancing, continuity of operation plans include work from home provisions. They include increasing the bandwidth for VPNs, establishing methods for securing data in transit, usually using a remote dial-in VPN, for employees, and then ensuring that personnel losses, at least for cloud computing companies, aren't disrupted. People can access and manipulate the systems that they need to perform their day-to-day tasks, and that you're able to keep on your personnel and keep a level of productivity that supports the business. So when we talk about normal disasters, these are disasters that would cause an entire facility to shut down. So say a company's data center is set to shut down. That might predicate or force a company to travel or relocate their equipment to another site. 3 different types of sites that you can have. And these are sites where the information systems and the databases would be restored and then be used as the primary site to service web offerings, to service the cloud computing offerings. So we're talking about how you can reestablish your web servers, your IT infrastructure at a different physical location. You have a hot site, and a hot site is what we mostly see in the cloud offering. This is where there's full connectivity, there's servers available, there's everything available with the software except for the data. So all you need to do is transfer your backups to that hot site, and the hot site can be set up and running usually within a day. So software as a service, cloud service providers, or platform as a service, cloud service providers, where they provide you with everything but the data, those are considered hot sites. Software as a service, if you just have a web application offering. Platform as a service, if you need to set up your own servers, your own web servers and databases of that nature. Warm sites include the building and then all the components necessary with heating, ventilation, power systems, physical security. This is an infrastructure as a service offering. And a cold site is just basically a building. It doesn't have the infrastructure ready to house servers, to properly cool them, to secure them. It's basically a rented building. That's a cold site, and it takes the longest to set those up. None of the cloud service offerings are cold sites. It's basically a warehouse. Think of it that nature. It's not even considered in the cloud model. So we're talking about hot sites and warm sites when we talk about cloud computing. Hot sites are platform as a service and software as a service, and warm sites are infrastructure as a service. All right, and that's going to wrap up today's session. Hope you got a little better understanding of business continuity, disaster recovery, continuity of operations, and the different terminologies and how they relate with one another. Thanks for tuning in.